Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're going in depth on Plus Therapeutics, a company that's really making some interesting moves in cancer treatment. And we've got a ton of information to help us understand them, like research reports and articles, and maybe even some of your own personal notes on Plus Therapeutics, all linked in the description, by the way.
That's right. We're going to break down all that info, find the most important takeaways, really give you a clear picture of this company.
Perfect. So maybe we should just jump right in. What does Plus Therapeutics actually do?
So Plus Therapeutics is what's known as a clinical stage pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And that means they're not selling any treatments right now. They're still in the research and development phase, but they're focused on this really interesting area called targeted radiotherapeutics.
Targeted radiotherapeutics.
Yeah.
So is that like instead of blasting the whole body with radiation, they're sort of like sending a guided missile to the cancer cells?
Exactly. You got it. And that approach, it aims to minimize damage to healthy tissue, which is a really big deal, especially when you're talking about sensitive areas like the brain.
Right, right. Like with their main product, I think it's called rhenium-186 nanolepisome, and that's for things like glioblastoma, right?
He's got it.
And those are really tough cancers to treat, and they don't have a lot of great options right now.
No, they don't. It's a high-stakes arena, and not a lot of companies are willing to take that on, so it says something that they are going for it.
Yeah, so they're developing some pretty cutting-edge treatments.
Yeah.
But how do they make money doing that? They're not actually selling anything right now, are they?
Not yet, no. Right now, they're pre-revenue. They're relying on investments and grants to keep the research going and to run their clinical trials. The hope is to eventually bring these treatments to market and start generating revenue from sales. But right now, it's all about the development.
Makes sense. I did notice they have a partnership with Nanotrex
Yeah.
Corp, specifically for their glioblastoma treatment.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that a sign that they're making moves to actually get these treatments out there?
Absolutely. Collaborations are huge in the pharmaceutical world.
Right. So let's zoom out a little bit. What's the market like for Plus Therapeutics? You know, what kind of competition are they up against?
Well, the global radiotherapy market, it's booming. It's expected to reach almost $13 billion by 2034.
Wow.
That's a huge opportunity. But that kind of growth, it attracts a lot of big players.
I bet.
You're talking about companies like Siemens, GE Healthcare, companies with deep pockets and name recognition.
So what makes Plus Therapeutics stand out in a crowded field like that?
Well, their targeted radiotherapeutics platform, it's different. It offers a level of precision that you don't see with a lot of other companies, and that could lead to fewer side effects for patients. And then there's the fact that they have secured an orphan drug designation for one of their treatments.
Right. Can you remind me what that means again? Orphan drug designation. Why is that so important for Plus Therapeutics?
Basically, it means the FDA has recognized that their treatment has potential for a rare disease. And that comes with some pretty major benefits, like a possible 7 years of market exclusivity, tax credits, and even some exemptions from certain regulatory fees.
So a lot of advantages.
Yeah, it's a game changer, especially for a smaller company like Plus Therapeutics.
Okay, so we've talked about the technology and the market, but let's talk about the people for a second. Who's running this company?
Well, the CEO is Mark H. Hedrick. He's got a long history in the pharmaceutical world. But what's really interesting is he's put his money where his mouth is. He's invested a significant amount of his own money into Plus Therapeutics stock.
That's always a good sign. But investing is one thing. Has this management team actually shown they can, get things done?
Well, one example that stands out is their handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. They actually managed millions of vaccine doses and testing supplies for the Texas Department of State Health Services.
Oh, wow.
And that was during a very chaotic time, with a lot of logistical hurdles.
So they can operate under pressure. That's good to know. But developing these new treatments is expensive. How's Plus Therapeutics financing all of this?
Well, they've been doing a mix of private placements and securing grants. A private placement is basically selling shares directly to investors, and they've also gotten some substantial support from groups like the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas.
So they're piecing things together, but is it enough? I mean, relying on outside funding like that, it can be risky, can't it?
It definitely is. If that money dries up, it could seriously impact their operations and their research.
Right. So they've got exciting technology, a capable team, but also a lot of financial challenges.
Yeah.
And speaking of finances, let's dive into their financial health and see what their balance sheet tells us. What kind of shape is Plus Therapeutics really in?
Well, Plus Therapeutics currently has a pretty small market capitalization,
Okay.
which means the total value of their outstanding shares is relatively low.
Huh?
And importantly, they haven't turned a profit yet.
That's not unusual for a clinical stage company, is it?
No, not at all. But it is something investors need to be aware of. And there are some red flags on their balance sheet that I think we need to talk about. For instance, they have negative shareholder equity.
Negative shareholder equity. Can you break that down for me? What exactly does that mean?
In the simplest terms, it means their debts are actually greater than their assets.
Oh,
And on top of that, they have a high debt-to-equity ratio, which basically means they're using a lot of borrowed money to keep the company going.
so their finances are looking a little shaky. They're
Yeah.
spending a lot, no revenue yet, and a lot of debt.
Yeah, you could say that. And their cash runway, the amount of time they can operate without more funding, it's pretty limited.
Okay, so Plus Therapeutics, it's a bit of a tightrope walk right now, but we've only just scratched the surface.
So we've talked about the company, the management, their financial situation, but what about the market? How do people feel about Plus Therapeutics?
Yeah, what's the sentiment like around the company?
Well, the stock has been up and down, kind of a roller coaster ride. It's made some investors excited and others, well, a little nervous.
I can see why. Investing in a clinical stage pharmaceutical company, it's always going to be a risk.
Right, absolutely. You're betting on a lot of things going right, like getting FDA approval, successfully launching the treatments. It's a long and uncertain road.
Right. A lot of hurdles to clear. Speaking of which, did they get some good news recently with their treatment for leptomeningeal metastases?
Yeah, they got that orphan drug designation, which has definitely given investors some more confidence. It's a sign that the FDA sees the potential of that treatment for this rare cancer.
Okay, so that's a good sign. But overall, what are the analysts saying? Are they bullish or bearish on Plus Therapeutics?
It's a mix, really. Some analysts are giving it a buy rating, predicting the stock price could really jump. But others are more cautious, pointing to the financial instability as a concern.
So it's that high risk, high reward kind of situation. Some people see big potential, others are hesitant because of the risks. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But who are the people making those bets? Who actually owns Plus Therapeutics?
This is where it gets interesting. Plus, Therapeutics doesn't have a single majority shareholder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, institutional ownership is relatively low, meaning those big investment firms, they haven't taken a huge stake. And insider ownership, which is how much stock the executives and employees hold, that's also on the lower side.
So no one person or group is calling all the shots. Could be good, could be bad, I guess. But before we wrap up, I think it's important to look at the bigger picture here. The risks and opportunities for Plus Therapeutics.
Totally agree. And a good way to do that is with a SWOT analysis,
Okay, yeah.
looking at their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Sounds good. Let's start with the strengths. What are Plus Therapeutics' biggest advantages in this market?
Well, first and foremost, their targeted radiotherapeutics platform. That's potentially revolutionary. It could really change the game in terms of how we treat cancer with radiation. And they're going after those central nervous system cancers, which, as we talked about, are incredibly challenging.
So they found a niche, and it's a big one. Any other strengths worth mentioning?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Those strategic partnerships, those are huge. By working with other companies, Plus Therapeutics gets access to resources, expertise, stuff they might not have on their own. And of course, we got to mention that orphan drug designation again, which gives them a real leg up in getting that treatment to market.
Okay, so innovative technology, a focus on a tough market, and good partnerships. All strong points. But let's be realistic. What are some of Plus Therapeutics' weaknesses?
Well, their financial history is not great.
Right.
They haven't made a profit yet, and that's a big question mark for long-term sustainability. And as we discussed earlier, their cash is limited, and they've got a lot of debt. Not ideal.
No, definitely not. So looking ahead, what opportunities could Plus Therapeutics capitalize on?
Well, the market for radiotherapy is only getting bigger. That's a good thing for them. And if they get FDA approval for their main drug, that could be a huge win. More revenue, maybe even profitability finally.
Fingers crossed for that.
Yeah.
But there are also threats, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that could really hurt Plus Therapeutics?
Well, the competition is fierce. There are some massive players in this space with tons of resources and brand recognition.
Kind of a David and Goliath situation.
Yeah, in a way. And then you've got the regulatory hurdles, getting drugs approved. It's not easy. There are delays, rejections, all that. Plus, there's always that risk that their funding dries up.
It's a lot to juggle. So we've got a company with amazing potential, but facing some real obstacles.
Right, and it all comes down to how you weigh those factors. Is Plus Therapeutics a good investment? That's the big question.
So we've really gone deep on Plus Therapeutics, looking at their business, their leadership, their finances, and all the competition they face.
Yeah, we've uncovered a lot. It's a company with some exciting technology tackling a really tough part of the market, but they definitely have some financial challenges to overcome.
A real high-risk, high-reward situation.
Yeah, no question. Their success, it all depends on whether they can get those treatments developed and out into the market. And that's not easy in the pharmaceutical world.
Not at all. So after looking at all this, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about when they consider Plus Therapeutics?
I think the biggest thing is you've now got a much deeper understanding of this company, their strengths and their weaknesses. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, does Plus Therapeutics fit into your own personal investing style?
Right. Are you the kind of investor who's okay with taking big risks for the chance of a big payoff?
Or are you more cautious? Do you prefer to stick with those companies that have a proven track record, that are already making money?
There's no right or wrong answer. Right. It's all about your own risk tolerance, your goals, and how Plus Therapeutics might fit into your portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. The important thing is to be informed. And hopefully this deep dive has given you the information you need to make those decisions, not just about Plus Therapeutics, but about any company you might be interested in.
Absolutely. And speaking of information, I just want to remind everyone that all the sources we've used for this episode are linked down in the description.
Yeah, definitely check those out if you want to learn more. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that subscribe button and join us for more deep dives into interesting companies and industries.
And let us know what you think of Plus Therapeutics down in the comments. Or even better, give us some suggestions for companies you'd like us to cover in the future. We're always looking for new ideas.
Speaking of which, we're already working on our next deep dive. We're going to be looking at one of Plus Therapeutics' main competitors. It's going to be a fascinating comparison, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.
And if you want even more analysis and insights, you should check out the Stock Analytics AI YouTube channel. They're doing some really cool stuff with AI and finance.
Yeah, it's a great resource if you're interested in that world.
All right, one last thing. As always, a quick disclaimer. This episode is just for informational purposes. It's not investment advice. You should always do your own research and talk to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Plus Therapeutics, and we'll see you next time.